Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heidi. I've been living in Tokyo for about 4 years now, so I feel kind of qualified to give you some tips and tricks on how to make your trip to Japan even better. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, let's talk about tips for getting around the city or transportation tips. So aside from the JR Rail Pass, which covers transportation from Hokkaido all the way down to the south, know that there are JR Rail Passes that are regional and they're much cheaper and, depending on the duration of your stay, much better value for money. For example, the Tokyo Wide Pass is only 10,000 yen and it can get you as far as Karuizawa, which has amazing shopping options, especially if you like to go to outlets, and up to Tochigi, which is filled with World Heritage sites that you might want to experience. So if you're just staying in Tokyo, consider that. If you're staying in Kansai, there's also a Kansai Wide Pass, which gets you up to Amanohashidate, which is one of the 3 most scenic sites in Japan, and to Hiroshima, which also has another scenic site in Japan. So just know that there's so many options for the JR Rail Passes, especially the regional ones. I would highly recommend that you check that out first before investing in a JR Rail Pass that you might not be able to utilize to its full extent. Taxis are super expensive just to get on one. It's like 500 yen or something, and they get even more expensive at night. I would honestly make riding a taxi my last resort, my very last resort, especially when you land in major airports like Narita or Osaka. It's just too far, too expensive, and you're better off riding either an airport bus or the train. In terms of getting on transportation, it's pretty much the same all over Japan for riding trains, but in terms of riding the bus, it changes per region. Sometimes you get off at the front of the bus or the middle of the bus, and sometimes you enter from the middle of the bus and get off at the front of the bus. It can be kind of confusing, so if I were you, just do as the locals do and watch them as they get on and off the bus, because it can cause some problems for the bus driver and yourself. While public transportation in Japan is almost always punctual, there are some exceptions, especially buses. Be prepared to wait at least 5 to 10 minutes depending on the traffic, because as much as they want to be on time, sometimes, there are things that they can't control like traffic, so just stay there and wait at the bus stop. Next, let's talk about tips for eating out in Japan. Normally, for big groups of upwards of 5 people, it gets really hard and your options start to dwindle down in terms of group seating. Especially at small local restaurants, it might be really hard for them to seat you all together, so sometimes you might receive an outright refusal, which is what happened to me once. I think we were a group of 7 people and the restaurant just didn't feel comfortable accommodating all of us at the same time. So even if we wanted to split up into 2 tables, they didn't let us do that. So just be mindful, and I would really suggest researching restaurants beforehand, knowing where they are, because some of them are very popular, which bleeds into my next point of reserve if you can. If you find a good restaurant, it's local, it has high ratings, I would have someone from your hotel, a friend who can speak Japanese, or your Airbnb host reserve on your behalf, because restaurants in Japan, the food is great, but it's normally very small, so just be prepared to either wait in line a really long time or just come ready with a reservation. If the restaurant doesn't take reservations, on the other hand, be there 30 minutes before it opens, upwards to an hour, depending on how popular the restaurant is, because most Japanese people are ready to wait in line for that long just so they can eat at a really good restaurant. And I think that's just a testament of how good the restaurant is. So be ready to wait. That's really something you have to prepare yourself for. While most credit cards are accepted in Japan, it's always good to have some cash on hand. If you're going to the countryside or eating at a very local mom and pop type shop, most times they will not be able to accept your credit cards. So just in case, always bring at least 3,000 yen to about 5,000 yen and you should be good. I know that we all want to have that local Japanese nightlife experience, so heading to an izakaya might sound like a good idea, but I'm telling you, a lot of their menu items, especially if it's very local, are not written in English, so you're going to have to either use Google Translate, which might not give you the most accurate translation, or go with a friend who can read and speak Japanese, because I'm telling you, sometimes I can't even read the kanji that's written on the wall. It's really difficult. Another option is I would recommend to go to Torikizoku, which is a chain of izakaya, and they have an English menu. You order from a tablet. I think most menu items, if not all, are about 330 yen at the time of recording, so check it out. And there's so many of them all over the country. It'll be hard to miss one. If you're going to places like Golden Guy, be aware that some of these bars also have cover charges upwards of 1,000 yen, and that's just because the space is so small. This is pretty customary in that area, so if you're not ready to pay that upward fee, don't drink there. Basically. Typically for cafes, it's a clean as you go system, so after you're finished eating, bring it back to this area near the counter where they'll have like shelves for you to return the dishes. Otherwise, make sure to watch the other people and what they're doing, and you should be fine. Moving on, let's talk about shopping. So just be aware of a few things. The first one is free size is the norm. Be aware that the size M that you're used to back home is more likely an L or an XL in Japan. The reason being is because their body frames are much smaller, and of course the clothes are catered to their body type, not yours. So don't be too shocked by that. Next, in terms of shoe sizes, if you have slightly larger feet than most people, like me, don't expect to find cute shoes, especially women's shoes. So my foot size is size 9. Impossible. I only wear sneakers for that reason alone. Next, for brands that I can recommend for girls, I would recommend Lori's Farm and Nico and ... I love those two brands. I think that the pieces are very high quality. Again, the sizing might not be so inclusive, but you'll get a really good pulse on what the trending items in Japan are, and it's not too expensive. So check them out if you can. Next, as for makeup, don't expect to buy too much makeup if you are not fair or if you have tan skin like me. Instead, I would recommend that you check out the blushes and lip colors and lip tints. My favorite makeup brands personally are Cezanne and Canmake. Super pigmented blushes, long-lasting, and high-quality products that won't break the bank and are perfect souvenirs. Next, in terms of Japanese skincare brands I can recommend, while most Japanese skincare brands aren't necessarily expensive unless you're buying SK2, there are two brands that I would really like to recommend to you guys. The first being Hadalabo and the second one being Hatomugi. They're not too expensive, they work great, and there's a reason why they're so popular in Japan. You can find them at most pharmacies, so check it out. Eating while walking isn't very common. If you're in a really busy place like Asakusa, normally they'll have you stand next to their stall, finish eating, throw the wrapper, and then move on with your day. When you're riding trains in Japan, try to be as respectful as you can and speak in a very low voice. A lot of Japanese people will be on their phone, they'll be quiet, some of them will be sleeping, so just be mindful of that. Be careful when you're walking on the sidewalk because bicycles are allowed on the sidewalk. So if you're not careful, if you're wearing headphones, you might crash into one or one might crash into you. So please always keep that in mind as you're walking. Or if you smoke or you're with someone who does, make sure that they smoke in a designated smoking area, especially around places like Harajuku, Shibuya, Shinjuku, Akihabara, because sometimes the police will come up to you and fine you if you smoke in a place that you're not supposed to. The last thing you want to do is have a policeman come up to you, speak to you in Japanese, and you totally not understanding what they're saying because you don't want to ruin your vacation by getting in trouble. Also note that some cafes and some convenience stores have designated smoking areas, so just be on the lookout for that and ask around, especially the hotel or where you're staying or the Airbnb host. In terms of garbage and recycling, know that a lot of places in Japan don't have garbage cans, so be very prepared to hold on to your trash until you get home or until you find the nearest convenience store and dump your trash there. If you're staying at an Airbnb, make sure to dispose of your trash properly. There are very strict rules in terms of garbage disposal in Japan, and you don't want to get into a fight with your Airbnb host, so as much as possible, abide by them, study them, and it shouldn't be too hard. Lastly, a place that I wouldn't recommend that you guys go to is Kabukicho in Shinjuku in Tokyo, simply because it's known as a red light district and there have been a lot of accounts of tourists getting scammed there, situations involving the police, and I personally do not go there. I would not recommend that any of you do, especially if you're traveling with family or with friends. So yeah. All in all, I hope that these tips helped you and I hope that you have an amazing time in Japan. It might seem like a lot of rules or tips or things to look out for, but really at its core, it's just about being mindful about the people around you, trying to do as the locals do, and you should be fine. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye!